What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the Last of Us Left Behind DLC and why it's so good. I felt this was kind of timely with episode 7 of the HBO show being left behind and telling the story of Ellie and Riley. Now, I'm recording this before that goes up, but I can see into the future. I wanted to go back because this really was one of the better DLCs, I think, put out there. This was, of course, at the peak of Naughty Dog, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this was the DLC for them. You think back before this, right? Last of Us came out 2013. This came out on Valentine's Day, which I felt was very timely considering these two's relationship, right? So it came out Valentine's Day of 2014, and you think back to The Last of Us, you can think back to Uncharted 3, 2, 1, there's no DLCs, right? So, or at least no DLCs when it comes to story content. This was really Naughty Dog's first jump into this kind of thing. And they really didn't even replicate this until Lost Legacy for Uncharted, which was a full-on game. So this was kind of their warm-up, and I thought they did such a spectacular job. So what is this all about? Well, this takes place in that little zone in The Last of Us towards, well, let's say the second half of the game. I honestly think starting just at the beginning of where it's placed in the canon of The Last of Us is perfect. Because in context, you can play Last of Us and it's completely fine, right? Joel gets injured and you go through the whole David arc and all that. That's one of the better arcs of the entire game. And you can maybe question, I think that's honestly what makes this so special, you maybe can question, well, how in God's name did Ellie manage to do it? Now, in retrospect, and you look back at this, they only show a little. It's not a full-on look at how Ellie saves Joel's life and keeps him around for quite a while. It's not that far. But it juggles a couple different things, which also I think makes it extremely special, because not only does it fill in that little, canon piece that was missing, but you didn't really know if you needed it, right? Who knows? You could have left it completely out. It covers that, but also covers Riley, a character that was mentioned throughout the game. And, again, you question, well, this is a cool little backstory and we're getting a little bit of info, but, maybe we see her, maybe we don't. And then you get to see the relationship. So two different things. Now, I will personally say I really enjoyed the Riley parts of Left Behind more than the Ellie parts. At the same time, it's an incredible, incredible contrast. And in fact, I believe when it was kind of conceived, when they were going to do this, I think that was a big theme that they wanted to contrast. Ellie in the current timeline, right, of The Last of Us, there's a lot of fighting sequences. They also add some new stuff. This was really the beginning of what you would then see, at least in my opinion, in The Last of Us Part 2, where you could basically pit infected versus humans. There's several locations, in fact, almost all the locations that you're fighting, groups of enemies as Ellie in the current time. There's all these opportunities to get them to attack each other. There's several of them. If you watch some of the hardcore runs, right, like permadeath kind of stuff, if you watch those, you'll see the best way of doing it, let them handle each other. You kind of hang back, throw some bottles, get them to antagonize each other, and then watch as it kind of falls apart. In terms of the story part of it, the biggest thing is just how Ellie is, caring for Joel. And I guess also specifically the ending, I would say, some of the final lines that Riley tells her in the past, kind of the themes, right? Carrying into the present about fighting. We could basically just kind of give up and just accept it, or we can keep fighting and we can just go until we can't go anymore. Those were some of the last things that Riley said at the end to Ellie. Now, I'm sure they talked a little bit more before everything went bad. And then that comes back up when, Ellie is transporting Joel. So I think those elements or those themes work extremely well in The Last of Us. There's some cool backstories. The last video on The Last of Us I made, we talked about Ish. This isn't to that level, but it does tell a story of these soldiers, right, and kind of what happens, and some of them make it longer than others. They do have another kind of backstory that's deep enough, and you can kind of piece it together by finding context clues and whatnot, but it's not, I would say, as good as Ish or things like that. But that's only half, and that's kind of the special part of this. It's only half of the puzzle. The other half is the past, so it's all Ellie and Riley, and you get their relationship, and it's a really, really cool relationship. And it also is an opportunity not just to meet Riley, right? We kind of get to fill in this missing gap of well, who is she? We hear a little bit, but what is she going to act like if we actually saw her in front of our eyes? We get that, but we also get a very different Ellie, which is kind of weird, maybe in a way. It's 3 weeks. It's only 3 weeks before the game starts. So it's a different Ellie. She just seems like a different person, but hey, you got a lot of growing up to do in 3 weeks when, spoilers, you're going to lose your friend and you're going to get bit. So you're going to be hit with all this real life stuff, that's not great to get hit by, and you're going to do it in like a 3-week span. And then you have the events of The Last of Us. So you have the relationship between these two characters that I think is really, really awesome. And then you have all their activities. So the activities probably carries it, at least for me. The brick throwing, the water gun fight, the arcade game. Oh my God, the arcade game is so, in fact, anytime they do something like that in this or in The Last of Us, they do an incredible job. They nailed it. They make them seem like kids, which, I mean, like Ellie is. She has that kind of personality in The Last of Us, right? And she has those moments, but you get to see these two just kind of, be wacky, and they get to play hide and seek, and they get to one of the most iconic moments, right, is the store where they try on the masks and the magic 8-ball, and they're asking it questions. There's just so many small moments like that are incredible. That's also thematically different as well, because you got these two and they're building a relationship, and they're having all of these like cool dialogues. They get to ask each other questions. It's really, really well done, and it balances out extremely well. Again, ironically, I'm more of this side. I'm more of the story element, building these two's relationship. I could go around that store. In fact, I do every time I play this game. Go around the store, just every prompt. Really, that's what it is, right? Anytime you're able to do something as Ellie when you have Riley around, whether it's a mini game kind of activity or, whether you're just talking about something, you do it. You just want to hear these two kind of talk and experience what life was like when these two are around. And then you got the ending. So the ending is just so, it's iconic. It's probably a little less iconic, right? It's not in the same tier as when you think of like The Last of Us as a game. I don't know how many people played this compared to The Last of Us, but I think the ending is beautiful. And it's definitely sad, right? For sure. One small, this is a very small detail that I always notice and I always love is the realism. And what I mean by that is when Ellie's getting attacked, you can actually see in the game, it's not really a cinematic, right? Because you're kind of playing it, but you can see the infected bite her arm, and you can see the blood, and you can see the teeth mark as it does it. It is fast enough where you may not notice it. And then because of kind of this push off that she does, or Riley does, and all this stuff, you don't get a really clear look at her arm. So if you're really not paying attention, you may not see it, right? It may not actually be visible to you. But if you're looking when she's being attacked and she does a couple different arm movements and the infected's trying to bite her, you can see the moment where it connects to her arm. And that's a small thing, but I think that's just a really, really cool detail. And then you got that cutscene. And it's heartbreaking. It really is. Like Ellie just basically being like, I can't believe this happened. And then Riley, holds up her hand and you see it on her. And it's like, oh, man. And, the whole point of it was that they're just trying to get away. They're trying to have some fun. And they kind of have some emotional ups and downs while they're doing it. They did not go there to have that happen. They did not go there for Riley to die. Well, really, right? And that's what makes it so incredible in a weird way, is they think they're both going to die, obviously, right? As soon as Ellie gets bit, she knows she's done. When Riley gets bit, she knows she's done. And Ellie goes on a rampage, right? She's breaking everything. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And then it's sad on top of it because it's like, well, we know. And it also lets your imagination, that's maybe one of the most special things. It lets your imagination continue to go. Because that's where it ends. You see that, Riley tells her, we need to get out of here, or let's go back. And so they leave, and that's it. Cuts to black. So you have the theme, right, because of what Riley says, and it connects to the current day Ellie. So I thought that was great. But it also lets you think a little bit, because it's like, well, you still have a missing part. This entire Riley thing was missing until they added it for Left Behind. But now you're left to think, well, how did those last couple hours go? Because their relationship very up and down and like roller coaster. And, but these last couple hours, it's going to be where Riley's starting to change and Ellie doesn't. And like, how does Ellie process something like that? How does it all, like literally the ending, how does it go down? And you're kind of just, they're not going to tell you. They're just going to kind of let you just imagine it. And I think that's honestly incredibly, incredibly cool, if not incredibly sad. But I love it. I think Left Behind is incredible. Again, really for Naughty Dog's first big DLC. And I mean, at this point, really one of their only DLCs, or maybe their only DLC, period. Lost Legacy became its own thing. Part 2 doesn't have a DLC. Like, when they go for it, they go for it. And this thing, by the way, was super short. It wasn't that long. I will say that. This was not that long of a DLC. I believe it was $15 at the time that it came out. It's part of The Last of Us Part 1, so you can play it in the remake that they did. But it kind of had everything. It was short, but it was what it was. You know what I mean? It didn't try to overstay its welcome. It wasn't trying to do too much. It wanted to kind of tell a dueling story, 2 different time periods, 2 different almost versions of Ellie, and it wanted to do both. So I'm recording this, and this video will probably go up before the episode. So I really can't wait to see how that episode can retell, you know, an iconic story, I would say, like this. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.